Hello, and welcome to Mixology, where we launch each episode mixing up a beverage as we discuss how customer education and customer marketing mix together as scale engines to customer success. Time we're talking smart goals, and as a year-end, your new beginnings kind of activity, I thought it was appropriate to put in a little hot chocolate for the holidays. And so I've got, again, ingredients listed prior to this. So pause, go back, pick up everything that you need. This is half of a cup of milk, whatever milk you like. I mixed mine as a quarter cup of whipping cream and a quarter cup of 2%. But you could do, if you're an almond milk drinker or a soy milk drinker or an oat milk drinker, be my guest. Take your pick and mix it all together. I also have some chocolate mix here that I mixed up. It is kind of a 2-to-1 ratio for sugar to cocoa powder. So as much as you like, I mixed up a bit so that I could leverage it with the littles here a little bit later. But I'm going to load it up with chocolate because I love chocolate. And let's mix that together. The milk is warmed on the stove. If you're a microwave person, you can certainly use the microwave. Just be careful that it doesn't boil over as you're working with it. And you can see here, I'm just stirring it up. Get it all mixed together. If I were really good, I'd probably use a whisk, but I'm not. Not today. There we go. It smells like chocolate now. There we go. That's nice. We will take that. Oh, it's still a little bit not melted on the spoon yet. The other part to this is I've got Crater Lake hazelnut espresso vodka. So I'm going to use that as the base. We're not big mint people, but if you are a mint person, you could certainly leverage some kind of mint-based alternative and make it a chocolate mint kind of deal. But I like the hazelnut structure because that's like Pacific Northwesty. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the bottom. We're going to use an ounce of the vodka. There we go. I have my mug to put this in, so I'm going to go ahead and put in an ounce. And then add in the chocolate. Here we go. I'm going to put that almost to the very top. Should take about all of it in this particular mug. Of course, size the milk appropriately for whatever mug you're using to put it all together. Let me put this over here. Stir that in. Mix it up a little bit. Oh, it smells yummy. Oh, the hazelnut. Oh my gosh, the hazelnut is yummy. So I've got that taken care of. And of course, it wouldn't be holiday drink without Ready Whip. Again, if you are a purist, go ahead, mix up your own whipping cream. We had some left over from Thanksgiving, but it disappeared with the pie. How did that happen? So here we go. Adding it in. And I've got some green sprinkles. Holidays again without sprinkles. So let me see if I can do this without spilling them all over. Here we go. I did it. Didn't spill them all over the table. Unexpected. And there we go. So we've got green sprinkles on top of our Hollanday Burgundy mug. And let's go talk with Shannon about smart goals. So we are, oh, look at how they deflated they melted already. It was so hot. Okay, so this is the hot chocolate. Again, back up and make it. It's really super good. I tasted, of course, already, but it's got espresso and hazelnut liqueur in it. It is so yummy from Crater Lake, and if anybody cares. But what we're talking about now, because it's end of year and it's time that everybody's thinking about what are we going to do for next year. So Shannon and I were talking about how that it's kind of a multi-level process when we're talking about goals because we have goals as the person, me, Kristine. There are these things that I want to do next year as a person. I want to enrich my work life. I want to enrich my personal life. I want to go to Paris in September. And right, those things are tangible things that I can kind of work on. But then as the manager person, I also have goals professionally for my team. Right. I need my team to be able to learn and grow, but I also need my team to support the numbers that or the goals that we are responsible for or that we contribute to at the organizational level. And then I also need to be kind of focused on the higher level, right? What numbers do I own? Should I own? And how do all of the things that we do as a team feed up to those numbers justifiably, right? And I think that was my thought on this whole process because we've got so many different kinds. How do we do
Hmm.
it? How do we manage it all and kind of make them intertwine so that they're still telling that story? Because I think one of the underlying themes we have of series three is that what we do is a lot of storytelling.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there to the point of there's all these different goals. It's like you have company goals. And I forget, maybe it was Sam Murray or Courtney Sembler talking about this on LinkedIn about how some companies do like top-down planning. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily work because from the top, we don't always know the work that's being done at the bottom or what work should be done. But then there's also that other way of kind of bottoms up planning, which has maybe you're more in the details, but is it connected to the bigger picture? Right? And this is where we were talking about um, even being kind of in middle management, where you're not setting those big goals, but you're not the individual contributor level. And then so you have this ownership of the big goal and the work that's being done, and you kind of sit in the middle and you're translating maybe back and forth. And I think this is probably also where a lot of the planning is happening, right? At that like
Right? At that middle
middle level.
and when I was in the HRIS space, the SMART goals was one of the ways we did that, right? It was an easy way to really say we need them to be specific, our goals, whether they're my personal goals, they're my team's goals, they're goals for my people, whatever that is. I need to be specific. I need to understand exactly what it is I want to happen based on whatever the transactions are that are going to support that goal. I need them to be measurable because again, proof, right? We need to be able to say, yes, I did that, or no, I didn't do that. And then the A is, what is the A? I can never remember the order
Achievable.
that they're in. Achievable, right? I
Achievable.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, don't create a goal that is so far out of reach it can't be done.
Hmm.
If that's true and you really want to
Achievable
get
within a
there,
time frame.
right, you need to, and that's right, that's the relevancy and time bound, right? That's the construct of those three kind of playing together, because it could be that it's something that we can attain if it's a multi-year task, right? If we
Hmm.
say we're going to do this in 2 years or three
Hmm.
years instead of trying to get it done in the next, in 2026, I want it by the end, I need it to get in by 2028. And
Hmm.
for 2026, the components that grow into that are these three things.
Hmm.
And those can be done. This one will be done end of Q1. This one will go get started mid Q2. This one will go into Q3. We'll tie it all together in a nice, pretty bow in Q4, and we'll move on to the final pieces of it in 2027 so that we can roll it and do it really well and, release it or do whatever it is the goal is, right? If it's multi-tiered. And that was a good framework for us, right? I still use it today when I build out and I talk. The only thing I've done to mine is I've refined it to say I can only do three things at a time,
Yeah.
right? I have to put a a block around my time because if I try to do 100 things, none of them will be done well. None of them make it done at all
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
I'm too fragmented. So for me, it's three things. And then from those three things, I may have 100 little tasks that are associated, but the big picture is really three things that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Right.
Hmm. Well, I know we've talked before about planning, and people can go back. That might have even been season one,
Yeah,
where we
but at
talked
the very
about
beginning.
planning, and we talked about having like those, like what are those big things, right? What are the big things that are going to move the needle, and then how do we chunk away at that, right? Because often the work that's really going to move the needle is not something that you're just getting done pretty quickly, but it's something you're working toward over time. Or sometimes, especially in customer marketing, customer education, you're like laying a foundation for something, right? So maybe you're searching for an LMS and you're going through implementation. Maybe you're going through a whole tagging, like reorganization project, very important, but it might span some time. And so it's not necessarily happening right away. And then you could break it into like smaller, if you work in sprints or whatever, smaller action items from there. But it's like it has definition. And I think maybe on the goals front, I think sometimes what's hard is like, um, we talk even in customer education about not focusing on activities, but on outcomes, right? Like we don't just want people to engage with our learning. We want them to actually drive behavior change, and then that behavior change should then change some kind of like business impact metric, right? So if we're teaching someone something, the hope is maybe they adopt more of the product, and our hope that when they adopt more of the product that they retain or they grow with us, and that's our business impact. So these metrics kind of ladder up, and I feel like it's the same where it's not to say like we don't pay attention to engagement or activity metrics. Those are important, right? So like if I think about take it out of any of these worlds, like sales world, SDR, like their goal is a pipeline quota, right? That's like their big
Right.
business number. But how do they get there? It's like calls and meetings, and there are activities, but they know that these activities, when done in a certain volume with a certain consistency, will lead to the next step, the next step, the next step, and fill their pipeline, right? So it's like for us, what are those activities that if we were to kind of come down and say, okay, this is the goal we're trying to, or like the goal we're trying to meet. What are those things that, like, what are maybe the buckets of work? And then from there, we can break it down. Um, yeah, because that's how I'm thinking about, like, I think a lot about laddering up, and I wish I had a good visual for this, but I really don't. Um, I'm not, I haven't found one.
This is where AI is my friend. I'll ask AI to build this one for our
Yeah.
thumbnail for this episode because I think you're right. I think that the at the middle, when we're talking at the manager and director levels, we kind of are looking at the chutes and ladders concept, right? Where we've got the ladder beneath us and then the ladder going up, and there's a kind of a landing in between those where we're trying to figure out what's coming down, right? What do we need to tie to at that higher up level? And how do we focus attention on the details that are necessary to get the job done, right? To get that goal accomplished, to work with it. And we used to do, one of my managers was really good at this in that they would have a big executive board meeting, and all of them would sit down and say, these are the five things we want to do as an organization. Who's responsible for them? What team takes the lead on this? How do they contribute? Right. And then each of the people on that group would then take it to their team,
Team,
their management
do the
team,
same thing.
and say, at the management level, what are we doing to support these efforts? What contributions do we have? And then who on our team is going to be responsible for those contributions? And how do we measure the success of those contributions? Which I thought was really well thought out
Mm-hmm.
because it made it really easy for me as an individual contributor to say, these are the three things I have to do this year, or these are the three things I need to get done this quarter, or however it plays out, to say that my responsibility is to always do these standard things as best as I can,
Mm-hmm.
always. But in addition to that, we're supporting these other goals, and that means I have to take on these three extra things to move the needle in the right direction on those whatever those things are. And so it made it really easy to draw straight lines
Mm-hmm.
from the big picture that they talk about at the RKOs and other big meetings.
Well, it makes me think a couple things. Like one, understanding like how does your work serve the bigger picture? Because sometimes I think, especially at the individual contributor level, you're like, well, I kind of like do things, but if you don't see where that actually impacts things, it's not often very meaningful unless you just, I mean, some of us like to do things, but we hope maybe that that's doing something more than just like checking a box and getting something done. And then it sounds like focus too, which I think is a big problem for us in SaaS is it's so fast moving. And so what are those things, right? You have those kind of keeping the lights on, business as usual activities. Like these are the things that just need to continue to get done. They can't fall off the plate. But then what are those things? And this is, I don't know, like sometimes people call them strategic bets or key initiatives or like um, strategic projects, right? Where it's like, what are those buckets of work or what are those things that we think are really going to move things forward? So maybe in education, it's like um, creating onboarding or creating onboarding for a new segment, or maybe it's like building out life cycle communications because you haven't had those before. Like, what are those things that we think, okay, we're going to invest in these areas because we expect there to be growth? And then the third thing I heard was specific measurement, because sometimes, again, like I think we are given activities, and Allison Bukowski and I talked about this one time, is we're constantly told that your work should be measurable and impactful and it should tie to business goals and whatever. And then we are constantly asked to do things that where it's like, hey, can you do this? And if you said, well, like, what purpose does that serve? What goal are you, like, what are you trying to achieve with this? People don't always have answers, right? So, like, sometimes we're asked
Right.
to do things that aren't tied to anything. And so we either need to ask those questions. Hey, what do you expect us to do for the business? How do you see this being impactful? What does success look like? Or then we have to go back to the drawing board and propose that of, hey, I heard that you wanted to work on this, and this is what I believe success looks like. That if we do this well, this is the impact that it could have, and here's how we'll measure that. But if we don't have that element of, what does success look like, then we're just in the habit of doing things. Um, I think that's something I,
And I think it makes it hard for us to have the discussions we need at higher levels if there's no understanding of what success looks like. Right. Because we do tend at the level that we're at, sometimes we get a request that is unformed. Right. It's the big one I've been hearing a lot lately. I need a certification program.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Okay, let me just
Great.
whip that right on up for you.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's like, but this is where I think being consultative and asking, like, amazing, cool idea. Can you tell me a little bit more? Like, certification program, who is this for? And like, what is this? What behavior are we trying to drive? And when you think certification, I always ask people, like, what's an example that you love? Like, who's someone doing this really well? Because what I'm trying to understand is, are you looking for high stakes or are you looking for I took a knowledge check and like got a certification that I can put on YouTube, not YouTube, LinkedIn. Um, is it more like informal or is it more formal? Because for like, and this is where I think sometimes we're like, what do you mean certification? Don't you know how much effort this takes? Like, this is a big deal. And it's time consuming and it's expensive and like, are you sure? And then it's like, hold on, maybe we just ask a few questions to understand like what is it? And then maybe we can call it a whatever, you can whatever, call it a certification. But like we'll know. We're not really talking about a certification. Talking about a little
right?
course certificate at the end. Um, and
We're
that's
just
fine.
saying you got this far, yay for you.
Yeah, yeah. And
Which
but
is
it's
not a
like
bad, it's not a bad stepping
not a
stone.
bad thing. No, and sometimes that's sufficient. But I think it's like figuring out what exactly are people looking for. And sometimes we have to coach them. Like I think I teach my students this, like an unofficial part of your job is to coach and teach people. It's to coach and teach your peers on how to be like better colleagues. Sometimes it's managing up, like helping your boss, hey, like this doesn't have a goal, but not saying that, but more like certification. Love it. Like, what are we thinking? Give me a little bit, like what inspired you to come up with a certification? And now I'm trying to understand like what's behind this and what are the goals and the motivations and what impact do we see this having? And when you're saying certification, are we talking real certification? Are we talking, certificate? And that's where I think sometimes, man, I actually like not work related at all, was at the um like bone and joint office, and this guy was like having this whole argument with the receptionist because he was asking for something, and he's like, well, you need to be able to give this to me. And she's like, I can't give you, it's basically, I think it was billing codes. Like he was asking for billing codes, and she's like, well, until you have your appointment, I can't give you billing codes. And this guy's like, legally you have to. And she's like, no, I can't. Like I can't until you meet with the doctor. And I'm watching this going like, we are not speaking the same language.
Right?
We're not
It's the
like,
language barrier. Those words
well,
don't mean what you think they mean.
no, and like I'm the worst because I have to insert myself in here because I'm like, we're not communicating. I like communication. But I said, can you help me understand, sir? What is it that you're trying to look for? What is it that you're trying to get? What's this advice? And I said, okay, I think over here, maybe you're using a word that actually has like a definition. And I don't know that that's what you're looking for. I don't think this is what you're looking for. But I said, and I think where we're getting hung up is you're saying this and she can't give you that. Okay. I would be like, I said, it's like checking out from Walmart and asking for the receipt before they've rung up your purchase, right? You can't get the receipt until you've paid for it and rung up your purchase, right? That's billing codes. I'm trying to explain to him in like human terms, but I think sometimes we get those directives too, where it's like, yeah, that has like that means something, but I don't know that we're on the same page of what that means. And so we're going to ask some questions to figure this one out.
And I think that's part of setting the goals too, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
understanding that the directive or the question that we are asked from both sides, to be honest, if I'm
Yeah.
working with my direct reports and they have a particular request, they want a new tool to do whatever, they want more time to learn, they want
Fair.
whatever the question is, right? Again, understanding where the request is coming from will help us figure out how to accomplish that
Mm-hmm.
task and be able to say, were we successful or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the part that is still incredibly challenging, regardless of organizational size, right?
Hmm.
I can
Yeah.
have as many conversations one on one with my directs as needed, but that doesn't mean that I still don't have a problem crafting the story I want to tell about where we want to go in 2026,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's our goal to going to be based on the requests, which may seem rather disjointed from my team of 3 or my team of 35, right? If I'm in a larger organization. And I think that part is also kind of challenging when we're at the mid-level.
Mm-hmm.
What about advice to individual contributors, right? If you're a team of one
Mm-hmm.
where you have to create and do, what kind of how do you manage that? What's the best way to make sure that you don't overload? yourself
Mhm.
with to-do list items.
Yeah. I think your how your boss handled that, I think we can do that for ourselves, right? Is work on what are those big rocks? What are those key things, key projects that need to happen, right? And so you have kind of your business as usual, keeping the lights on. We've always got to reserve some time for that. And then, okay, otherwise, these are our strategic bets. These are the things that we're focused on. And does work fall in here? And if we're agreed on that, then any new request, it's like, okay, well, how does that, play with these things that we've already agreed are the most important? And if it doesn't, do we need to shift something? Um, because I think we have to do that for ourselves. Like I'm a huge fan of like goals and planning so that you can effectively prioritize and have that conversation. But then if you're also doing individual contributor work, it's like doing that up front. Now it's really hard to do this and go back and forth between like goals, strategy, planning in the weeds. Eh, eh. It's just a lot. So it's like if you're spending time getting aligned here and we kind of do this, I do this quarterly, then I can just, now go execute for a while.
Heads down. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know like what is it that I'm trying to do and what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Like what's the work to be done and how are we measuring that? And I have all my goals like laid out and my key initiatives laid out and I report on those weekly. Like we have a management system where I'll give a weekly update. And that's where I'm doing my storytelling. Like, hey, here's how we're tracking toward
Mhm.
this goal and we're on track. Or like, hey, we're a little bit below goal and here's why, but here's what we're doing to get back on track. And now I have more proactive ability to kind of shape how people are perceiving the work that I'm doing, why it matters, like how it's getting done. But I do think it's like if you're an individual contributor who's got some of those, I think a lot of like customer marketing, customer education people, sometimes they're like team of one, team of two. And so you're doing a lot of the planning and the doing. Um, Actually spending that time and figuring out like what are those main priorities, those main goals. And I don't know, I struggle to focus just because I'm an easily excitable person and multi-passionate. And so sometimes I'm like, but I want to do this thing. Um, and instead, I have to be like, no, like look at your list. Like what are the main things? And if it's not a main thing right now, tough bananas. Like just gonna have to focus on the main.
And the challenge that I see as a person of one, as a team of one right now, is that I tend to gravitate toward the things, the next bright shiny thing. So I'll want to do this thing because I can justify it, but it's not
Hmm.
one of the goals, right?
Hmm.
It's not on the to-do list. It's an add-in that's going to take time away from those other things. And I
Hmm.
personally have to just get better about saying stop that,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Do what you
hard.
said you were going to do, execute against what you said you were going to execute,
Yeah.
deliver that, and then if you have extra time, go dig into those fun things and
Hmm.
really. But I also think that the fun things need to be part of the story that we tell, right? They need to be a part of how we build our 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 practice.
Hmm.
Because if I don't do some of those fun things, I can miss out, like going to a conference, right?
Hmm.
As much that can be a productivity killer, particularly for small teams, because when you're not doing the work, someone else has to do the work. And
Hmm. Yeah.
how do or the work still needs to get done, which means those are long days.
I'm thinking like I had asked this in a Slack group once about how do people do capacity planning for their team? Because you want to think about like vacation time, sick time. We're not 100% productive every day. We have ebbs and flows, we have meetings, we have back and forths, reviews and approvals. You've just got all this time. Maybe you've got professional development events, you've got conferences, workshops, e-learning that you're engaging with. And how do we account for all of this, right? And so just kind of the rule of thumb that I had learned is you budget 80% capacity so that you have 20% wiggle room for those last minute things that come up or for meetings and whatever. Which then you still need to be able to kind of assign like how much time is this going to take? And I mean, I'm on a marketing team. Marketing teams are not the most like like in product and engineering, you can do a sprint, you can swag things, you can have story points and whatever. In marketing, we're like, probably okay. Like
Maybe.
I think we're good. I used to do sprint boards for our team and just like look and say, okay, when you look at what you committed to for the next 2 weeks, are we like, yes, I've got this, I'm solid, or like, I might die, strong chance, not saying I will, but not saying I won't either, kind of a lot. Like where are we falling here? Do you feel like not challenged? Are you pretty good? And so it was more, that was our swag estimates rather than actual hours, which I'm sure someone is like, oh, can't believe that. But marketers, you're just not going to get them to do an exact science on anything.
My ratio is 70%
I mean,
active, keep the lights on plus assigned projects,
mm,
10% professional development,
ooh,
20% for everything else. So that
okay.
we're still giving credit for professional development, which may include like because my work is with mostly with customer ed teams, right?
Yeah.
The 10% is new product learning.
Hmm.
It's skills development around new tools and technologies that we're using in delivering training. It's building what again, new tools that we're talking about in terms of building content, because in most of my teams, the people who deliver content also build at least a portion of that content or edit existing content in tailoring circumstances where they're creating a customized course for a client that
Yeah.
is really a standard class, but we're leveraging their workflows or their whatevers, right? And that structure. So for me, that gives us still the 80% number that you were talking about. And then I still have that extra 20% for a COVID experience, somebody having, I'm taking 2 weeks next year to go to Paris and Lisbon for our wedding anniversary. We go on the fives, right? I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks and I'm going to do virtually no work,
Good. As you should.
because yeah, because that's part of the deal that I make when we do those trips is I will answer a couple of emails, but I'm not taking a conference call
There you go.
unless it's
Good.
over a beer with somebody in Paris.
Yeah.
I'm good,
Yeah. Like a casual, it's like a CE beers versus
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
actual work thing. Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
so that's I think that those numbers work, right? That 80-20 split kind of works to accommodate
but I
last
like
minute requests and stuff.
that you put in professional development because I do think that's something and if we're being honest, it's not terribly fair to people to expect them to do all their professional development outside of work hours.
Correct.
You've got
Correct.
caregivers, whether that's children or parents or other family members. People just have life. Life is a lot sometimes. So it's like we just can't expect people to just spend their free time like learning new AI tools or taking a course or whatever. Sometimes I think we put that expectation on people, but it's like if we actually value learning, we want a culture of learning, then we need to make time for that on the clock.
I've gotten it has varied in my experience. Again, Super Boss actually designated quarterly hours for people to do those kinds of tasks. So Sedma is a big deal, right? In her world, Sedma was a big deal, and making sure that when Sedma was close, everybody got a chance, or that they had time that at least once a quarter they were able to attend the online calls, whatever those are about, is of interest to them. Uh, so there were those activities. I think from a customer marketing perspective, the same thing would be true, right? Mary's running CMA Weekly, which is incredibly valuable if you're in the middle of working on something that is causing you nothing but grief. I attend with Evan, right? Once a month, he does from scratch, which is also incredibly useful if you're in the middle of trying to do something that you may
From
have never
scratch.
done before, right?
Yeah.
And so I think those activities are dual purpose, right? They may be working toward a goal, but they're also professional development because we get the networking aspects out of them so that when you do see people online, you can say, "Oh, I know them." right? I know, even though it's only this way, right? It's only on a Zoom call. I know them, and that changes the dynamic as you move forward. But I think assigning time to it on a regular basis is really important because it does indicate that we do value their professional development as much as our own, right? I try to schedule my own development in the week. So I probably spend about 15% of my week either networking or attending, those kinds of calls where I'm either answering people's questions or asking my own, one or the other,
I
right?
love it. Peer-to-peer
So
knowledge sharing for the
that's what it's all about. I think that's where we are strongest. Or assigning resources. I had a call last week where all I'm doing is really giving them a whole bunch of resources. They didn't know people like us really existed, and so now they do. You
yeah.
know. But okay, so the three things then that I think we're really focused on is make it measurable, right? Get
Mm-hmm.
it specific enough that it can be measured and
Yep.
identify what success looks like so
Yes.
that we can go against that, whatever that looks like. And that we make it time bound in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that it has
Like
to
you
have an
said,
end, right? We
smaller.
need to know exactly how we're going to get it done over
Yeah.
time, whether that's all at one quarter or a little bit every quarter to get to the end or whatever that looks like. We still need to kind of map it out so that we are allocating, because that's the third part, I think, is making sure that we are leveraging our teams but also giving back to our teams. And the same is true going up the chart, right? We talk about managing up all the time and the ability that we have to present that story of of how this is going. And we need to allocate time to make sure that we're telling the story up as well as gathering the details to build the story from the team,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in your summary, what do you got?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, making it measurable. And I think not just knowing what success looks like, but when we did this How to Prove the Value of Your Education program webinar a few months ago, we talked about, can you even measure that? Like if you're
Mhm.
increasing product usage, do you have any kind of product analytics tool? Because if you don't, like how are we measuring increased product usage? Um, like we're
I
implementing
had that
Chutes right now.
conversation last week with Rachel from Learn Experts. It's going to
Yeah.
be part of the white paper for next year.
Amazing. Yeah. So it's like, how do you measure that? Being focused, like what are those main things? And we're all a little like shiny object syndrome, and our businesses are too, right? And it's so easy to be like, whiplash, I have whiplash because things are changing all the time. But if we're being honest, like we are inclined that way too, to, want to do more than what we committed to. And so it's that exercise of self-discipline to do the main thing and not the fun new thing. Um, yeah, and then I think even on the storytelling side, I think the thing I would encourage people, so I mentioned we use this performance management system, and I'm teaching and training a lot of other people on how to do this now, not just how to use a system, that's easy, but I'm like, this is taking control of your career narrative. Is if these are my goals and these are my strategic initiatives and the projects that I'm working on, and if I'm regularly providing an update, then what I'm saying to the business is, I know what matters most. I know the work that I'm committed to. I'm responsible. I'm on top of it. I know exactly what my numbers are, where they are to date, why they are the way that they are. If they're not on track, I know why and I have a plan to fix it. Like I'm communicating, I call this communicating confidence all the time. Like I got promoted in October and one of the things the executive team said was, it was very easy. Shannon, like we all know what you're doing and the value that it provides because you're constantly communicating that. And so they see it, but then I'm also like taking ownership of that narrative, even in our performance management system. Like anyone could go in there and see, okay, here's how we're tracking week over week. And that's where I'm like I don't think that you can wait for your boss or an executive sponsor to do that for you as much as you can do that for yourself. Like if you have that ability to tell that story. And sometimes that's even been like in a past life when I was a learning product manager, I created this thing called Learn in Two. And it was a 2-minute update that I would give to my executive stakeholders every week. And I'd say, okay, here's the progress we made this week. Here's any notable wins, like, and here's what we're focused on next week. And it was really short, but it kept them all in the loop. And they were like,
Well,
wow,
and you've seen Lila's
oh, her
dashboard that
report.
she write her report. I think that we're going to talk about that next year too. That's on my list of things
Yeah.
to talk about next year.
Amazing. Yeah.
I think that those kinds uh, of short subject one pagers, whether it's an audio one pager or a video one pager or a written one pager, however it plays out, short form video, whatever, however you focus on that. I think that that is key because we've talked about the kind of go to market concept in a couple of different of the videos that we've already done, but this is really a part of that as well, right? It's making sure that people understand how we are contributing to the overall goals of the organization
Hmm.
and making sure that our teams are being recognized for the work that they do on behalf of the organization. And I
Hmm.
and that builds the trust that we need internally to occasionally ask for more,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
People want to invest in what they know is successful. And so if we've done a good job of communicating that, it becomes easier for sure. Yeah.
All right. So set your goals and let us know, right? Let us know what's your favorite methodology to work on this. Talk about what you've got as personal. What are your goals for as a person, right? What do you want to do for next year for 2026? That's going to change the way you do business, change the way you live, and not necessarily what is it, the resolutions, because I don't like that word because
No,
I
no,
think
no.
it has a very negative connotation. But I do think that we all maybe it's Blair's 2%, 3% better, 2%
True.
better that he was doing before, right? It's the little things that we do that are going to change and grow into something bigger. And how does that look for you guys? Let us know. All right.
Yeah.
Let it get out. Bye.